So with the end of the Darkin Saga being released, we have Aatrox coming into the fray, and Aatrox has completely changed the meta. Completely changed the meta. If you look up right now Runeterra.ar, you will find that Aatrox is at the top. So there's all these other decks and there's all these other options to play, but right now the top decks in win rate are Aatrox, Quinn Vayne, Aatrox Vayne. That is in win rate. 58% win rate is insanely high in this card game. 55 is usually something that you're like, okay, this is doing really well. If you look at the amount of matches that have been played with Aatrox Kayn are 8,477, and they're still considered one of the best decks, even with the 52% win rate. Meaning a lot of people are still probably playing this deck very poorly or not maximizing it to the full extent, and they're still getting a 52% win rate. Even though people are constantly playing against this deck, what happens as well is that when a deck is being played consistently and over again, it's a lot easier for someone that is not playing that meta deck to say, oh, I'm just going to play something that counters it. In this case, you can play something either mid-range or you can play a really aggro deck that ends the game really quickly before Kayn or Aatrox is able to gather up steam and to end the game. The reason Aatrox is doing so well is because it is nearly impossible to stop Aatrox from leveling up. Normally, when a character is summoned, you are just like, okay, I'm going to stop this champion from leveling up. I just have to deal with it. I just have to get it out of the way, destroy it. But with Aatrox, even if he dies, he will simply turn it into the Darkin Blade. When you put the Darkin Blade on another character, or you can just resummon Aatrox over and over again. Meaning, it is near impossible to get rid of this man. Not only that, but by having Darkin and Cultist in your deck, that's the reason that the Aatrox Kayn deck are do so well. Now, for the Aatrox Quinn Vayne. Vayne came out in this expansion as well. Quinn has not necessarily gotten a lot of play recently, but with the incorporation of all of these characters, there's just so much pressure that is being played with this deck. It's very hard when Aatrox is going to level up. Aatrox turns into a 10-10 that you now have to deal with, and that even if you kill it, it's just going to keep coming back. It is incredibly hard to deal with. Not only that, Aatrox is also continuously healing up your nexus. As the video that I'm about to show you, I played so many rounds where I simply kept surviving because my nexus keeps getting healed by Aatrox. It's not only fair that Aatrox will constantly be resummoned over and over again. Not only that, but it's constantly healing you and keeping you in the game. It's not a low damage unit. Normally, there's like a drawback or something that you lose out on. But I understand that new decks and new cards have to be released so that they're so strong that it's really worth playing them. But it's just so upsetting that you have to keep trying to kill an Aatrox, and the Aatrox is just going to eventually play World Ender. Reduce my cost by 1 for each time when an equipped or Darkin ally has struck this game. You know how easy that is? It's so easy. People are playing this at 3 costs sometimes. You may put any non-champion Darkin into your deck during deck building. Once you've played it or summoned 3+ different other Darkin, draw an Aatrox. I absolutely hate Aatrox. Do I hate this meta? Not necessarily. I like that we're kind of like in a mid-range control, kind of like feel to it, but I'm not a fan of how we have to deal with the fact that if Aatrox or Kayn are on the map, you feel like you're in a very bad spot. Normally when a champion is played, you feel like there's pressure there. You feel like you have to deal with it, and you feel like, oh, if I don't get rid of that champion's just gonna level up and it's gonna be incredibly difficult. But when Kayn and Aatrox are on the board, it's just very upsetting that you have to constantly be thinking of how you can avoid contact with them in every possible way. Sometimes you're trying to attack it with even a quick attack or whatnot, but when they get so ahead, there's this overwhelm that they get overwhelmed, and it's just so hard to deal with at that point. They're gonna hit you with the 10-10 unless you're blocking with something that's over 0.4 or higher in health. You're just gonna die, and that's what's really frustrating to play. As I played the deck myself, I thought, this is crazy. I've won even though they practically thought so much of what they're supposed to be doing. I only have to keep attacking and I'm going to win. And that's not fun necessarily. From my perspective, it doesn't necessarily feel very interactive from my part, because I do not feel like I'm trying or thinking a lot when it comes to the play. On the other hand, when I play other decks, there's a lot more thought. into what I have to do and how I have to play it. That is not happening with Aatrox. There's just not a lot of thought to it. Is something equipped? Yes. Is something not equipped? No. There's literally like 2 ways of thinking about this, and that's what I don't find exciting necessarily about Aatrox Kayn. I personally hated more the Seraphine Victor, but that was random factor. I dislike the random factor in card games, but I'm not a fan either of mindless attacks and mindlessly attack over and over to see who hits harder. I like the strategic concept of defending with one character and moving aggressively with another one. So that's what I really like, and hopefully Aatrox gets a little bit balancing. I'm also not a fan of scouts necessarily pushing and pressuring you over and over again. Other than that, I really love this game. I have to bash it because there's some unfun aspects to it, and hopefully we're able to get back to a point where everything gets a little bit more balanced, put a little things together. I know that expansions tend to have a lot of unbalancing to it, and sometimes it's very intentional, but the tweaking or the situation that is happening with Aatrox is just very unfun, and I really hope that gets fixed.